Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Liberty.me Live. I'm Mike Reed, and this is Scotch and Scholars. My guest today is Walter Block. Now, Walter is certainly the most prolific scholar in the liberty space, not only because of his antediluvian longevity, but also because of his breakneck publishing pace. His newest book is Water Capitalism, The Case for Privatizing Oceans, Rivers, Lakes, and Aquifers with Peter L. Nelson. I guess you got to include all the different bodies of water. I noticed springs and fountains aren't in there.
I wanted mud puddles, but the publisher refused.
Or even a drain spout. There's a ditch in front of my house that prevents us from flooding when the Red River rises. It could be good too. And your most famous book is Defending the Undefendable. And in one of Walter's most recent articles, he attempts to do exactly that. Walter, you have now proposed an organization called Libertarians for Trump, along with Dr. Donald Miller. This is, for me, really yet another shock from Block. I have to admit, I come to this conversation highly skeptical about the wisdom of supporting, condoning, or otherwise saying that I'm for Trump. But please, Walter, say hello and tell me that I'm wrong and that Donald Trump is the best hope for freedom in year 2016.
Well, the way you put it, I've got my work cut out with me. First of all, Donald Trump isn't my favorite guy. I mean, if I had my druthers, it would be Ron Paul. Rand Paul would even be better than Donald Trump. And in the article I wrote on LouRockwell.com, I said that I would support whoever the Libertarian Party nominates, unless it's someone like Bob Barr, but you say Gary Johnson would be way better. But I wanted to confine myself to those, just for argument's sake, who had a reasonable chance of becoming president. Whereas, as you know, the next candidate for the Libertarian Party, as beloved as he is and as good a libertarian as he is, doesn't have a chance of being the actual president. So we're pretty much limited to Donald, to Cruz, Rubio, when I wrote it, although Rubio is now dropped out,
right?
Kasich, but Rubio might come back in, and Jeb Bush, who knows what's going to happen in Cleveland. But of those people, just the Republican people, who is the best or who is the least worst? And I think that the least worst is Donald. Why?
So wait, is there a reason we're not considering Hillary and Bernie in this conversation?
Well, in the article, I focused mainly on Republicans, but Bernie isn't so bad. By the way, I went to high school with Bernie. He and I were on the track team together, so I have a sort of a soft spot for my old buddy Bernie.
Right.
And the way I see it, there are really three issues upon which we can vote: foreign policy, personal liberties, victimless crimes, and economic policy. And of those three, I think foreign policy is the most important because it's the dog that wags the other two tails. As Murray Rothbard and Bob Higgs have demonstrated over and over again, foreign policy sort of determines the other two. So if we had to pick one out of the three, foreign policy, economic policy, and personal liberties, we'd pick foreign policy as the most important because it determines the other two. Okay, now I think Bernie is way better than Hillary on foreign policy because Bernie isn't as warmongering-ish as Hillary.
Right.
I mean, look, right now, the U.S. has got, 1,000 military bases in about 150 countries, and they have the audacity to call that defense? I mean, that's offense. If any other country, Brazil or Montenegro did that, everyone would be yelling that they're a bunch of imperialists. Well, the U.S. is a bunch of imperialists. Okay, so I picked Bernie over Hillary, even though Bernie's a commie. Beloved commie, but a commie, what the heck?
Right.
But I was mainly focusing on Republicans because, it's hard enough sell for libertarians to get them to go for Trump. Imagine if I try to get libertarians to go for my man Bernie. I mean, that would really be a little too far even for me. So let's stick to the Republicans. Now, why do I think that Donald is the least worst or the best? Well, he says things like, look at what we did in, Liberia. It was horrible. And look what we did in Iraq. It was horrible. And they're going to try to do the same thing in Syria. not on my watch. He said things like that. Now, it's true he contradicted himself, but what the heck? You know, he's running for president on the Republican candidate, and he's not Ron Paul, so he's got to contradict himself. You know, we have to we have to say, sure, he contradicts himself, but the others also contradict themselves, so you can't pick on that basis. Whereas none of the others, Cruz never said anything like that. Rubio never said anything like that. Bush, Kasich, any of the other guys never said, we ruin things, foreign policy, and also Putin. The Donald likes Putin, and Putin likes Donald. Whereas I think it was Cruz, I'm not sure, one of those other guys, when Russia was having its airships go over Syria, and so he was asked, well, what should we do? And he said, shoot down the plane. Shoot down a Russian plane? I mean, what do they want, World War III? It was, what's his name, the fat guy, Christopher, what's his name? Christie. No, the New Jersey governor said that. And Rand Paul said, what, if you want World War III, vote for this guy. Well, I mean, that sort of a thing is very dangerous, to say that we should have a fight with Russia or China or something like that. Now, also, you know, Hillary sometimes screams and loses her cool. I've never seen the Donald lose his cool. Yes, he's boisterous and he's, you know, a bully in some ways, and, you know, he sort of insults people, but I never saw him lose his cool. And he's going to have his little hand or his big hand on the button. I'm not sure what size his hand is, but whatever the size of it is. And I trust him not to get, well, I shouldn't say I trust him not to get into World War III. I trust him more than the others not to get into World War III.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm ready to concede the point that, at least in terms of what he has said so far, Donald Trump sounds substantially more peaceful, more anti-war than the other Republican candidates. But we've got people in the audience who are just jumping on this the question of Bernie Sanders. I think some people seem to think you should be supporting your man Bernie instead of Trump, and other people think that Bernie's more of a warmonger than Trump. Can you go back to this point? I mean, why not try to sell us on Bernie? I mean, you're having a hard time selling me on Trump. I might even be more eager for Bernie than for Trump.
I'm on an interview, though. I support Bernie against Hillary. What I would like is a Bernie-Donald runoff or a presidential thing in November. So I do support Bernie, even though he's a commie. And also, if there's any sense in the Congress, he's not going to be able to get away with his crazy economics. But even if he did, again, look, I'm an economist. I think economics is important. But I've been convinced by Murray and Bob Higgs that foreign policy is more important. And Bernie isn't going to get into a fight with Russia. He loves Russia.
Or at least recent Russian history, the heritage.
Well, right. Not the present Russian group, which is too capitalist for him, but the good old-fashioned Stalin, Lenin. I think Bernie has a soft spot for Russia. I don't think he's going to get in a war with the Russians. And I don't want a war with the Russians. I don't want a World War III. I mean, I have grandchildren. I have children. You and me. I mean, there are a lot of people I like. I don't want them annihilated in a nuclear holocaust. So, yes, I favor Bernie vis-a-vis Hillary. And I favor Donald vis-a-vis all the Republican types. Again, my heart is with whoever the Libertarian Party nominates, unless it's someone like Bob Barr. But, you know, the former governor, Gary Johnson of New Mexico would be excellent, stands head and shoulders. But
why haven't you proposed a Libertarians for Bernie group, LFB, rather than LFT?
Well, stop pushing me toward Bernie. Because I was focusing on Republicans. And also, I think it's an easier sale for libertarians. I mean, you know, again, to tell a libertarian to be pro-Bernie, they'll think I'm drunk. Whereas if I tell them to be pro-Trump, they'll think I'm only half drunk.
Well, I think we got Mark Harris in the comments. He seems to think you're half drunk, but that you would be equally drunk. That you would be equally drunk to get us to try to support Bernie. He thinks it's the same hard sell. Okay, so let's talk to the war issue. Let's talk about Trump in terms of the war issue. Again, I concede it seems true that his recent statements during the campaign have been more peaceful, more pro-peace. more anti-war than the other Republicans. But I'm concerned that statements that politicians make on the campaign trail have very little predictive value for what they're actually going to do when they're in office. So it seems to me like it's kind of a toss of the dice what policy they'll actually pursue. George W. Bush said he was going to stop being the world's policeman, and then he jumped right into invading Afghanistan, Iraq, and sticking around in Afghanistan for a decade or more.
Right. Well, I agree with you that there's less than 100% correlation between what they say and what they'll actually do. But this doesn't vitiate in favor or against any one candidate. It's the same for all of them. And I might even concede that with Donald, it's a little bit more unpredictable because he's so, I don't know what the word is, all over the lot on everything. You know, it's hard to pin him down, whereas you can sort of trust Cruz to be a warmonger. So I agree that, you know, it's sort of like a pig in a poke or something. You can't tell, but that's all we have to deal with. Life is one of less than full information. We don't know what these guys are doing. All we can do is judge by what they say and how they say it. Do they smirk or smile or whatever? And I think based on what they say so far, the Donald is my man. Now, look, tomorrow Donald might change his mind and say, you know, we got to kill everybody, or let's declare war on Mars, or who knows what he's capable of saying. And tomorrow I'll change my mind. But based on, and Keynes once said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do?
Yeah.
And Keynes. Well, you know, based on what has been occurred up until now, the Donald seems to be the most peaceable in foreign policy. And of course, you know, his economics is screwed up. Protectionism. I mean, come on, we Libertarians are free traders, and he wants to save Social Security and Medicare and this and that and have socialized medicine. I concede all that, but the point is that his Republican candidates aren't all that different from him on economics, a little bit different. But then again, foreign policy is more important. So even if, I don't know, say Rubio was a little bit better on economics and Kasich was a little bit better on personal liberties than Donald, which I don't say, but hypothetically, I'd still favor Donald because foreign policy is more important.
Okay. So Dan Sanchez has this piece. I don't know if you read this. Daniel J. Sanchez has got this piece about a week ago entitled Donald Trump Will Make His Peace with the War Party. And he is specifically arguing that in terms of foreign policy, really the president will not buck the establishment trend. I just want to quote him a little bit to give Dan a chance here as part of the inspiration for this talk today. So Dan says, yes, it's fun to watch Trump troll the media, taunt the neocons, and humiliate heirs of political dynasties, just as it was probably fun to watch Reagan excoriate the Trilateral Commission. But don't get so caught up in electoral WrestleMania that you start fantasizing that yet another media celebrity seeking power will be some great agent of positive change. It didn't happen with Ronald Reagan, and it won't happen with Donald Trump.
Well, he might be right. Who knows? I've conceded this, that you can't tell for sure. But I think that we have to base our decision right now on the immediate and recent past. And the immediate recent past is, so far, Donald hasn't made his peace with the war party. Look, Cruz has not only made his peace already with the war party, he's a leader of the war party. With Donald, we have a chance. With Cruz, we have no chance. So it seems to me, open and shut, yes, he could be suborned by the war party. He might become a neocon, warmonger. Okay, in which case we're no worse off. But right now we got a shot at it. Where it's sort of like I don't know. We know what Cruz is going to stand for, and we know what Chris. What is the governor's name?
Chris Christie.
Chris Christie? No, that's not.
Yeah,
right.
Chris Christie.
Chris Christie?
Yeah.
Okay, but he said that he would shoot Russian planes out of the sky, and everyone applauded. And happily, Rand Paul said, you know, if you want World War III, here's your man. But the point is that what Chris Christie said about knocking Russian airships out of the air, that's preposterous, and yet all the others favored that. I didn't look at Donald when he said that, but based on what Donald said, at least there's a shot that he won't do that, because we have evidence he likes Putin. Nobody else likes Putin, and the others are criticizing him for liking Putin and Putin liking him. So this is hard evidence, and Sanchez is ignoring it.
So if we grant your position that Donald Trump is in fact significantly more likely to avoid World War III, I think well, and maybe Bernie Sanders too. In that case, I suppose I'm sort of avidly pro-peace. But that kind of depends on a judgment of relevance as to whether we think they're going to follow through with their rhetoric or not, whether the bellicosity of Hillary Clinton or Ted Cruz is just an electoral strategy too. But to me, a big part of the importance of politics today isn't really about policy or legislation or executive action itself, but about our ability to kind of hitchhike on it and use it for education or advertisement for the ideas of liberty or the ideas underpinning a free society. And so to me, an important part of the question here is not exactly what would this president or that president do, assuming we could know that, but what associations do we want to make in terms of how people think of liberty, libertarians, classical liberals, whatever you want to call it?
Well, if we go that way, then I fully agree. As I said in my article, I support whoever the nominee of the Libertarian Party is, unless it's Bob Barr or someone like Bob Barr, but barring Bob Barr, say Gary Johnson. Now, Gary Johnson is head and shoulders above these other guys, including Bernie and including Donald Trump. So if you're going to look at it from that point of view, we libertarians have to support the Libertarian Party. But there's another question. Who do we want to be president? Isn't that a relevant question for libertarians? Who do you want to be president?
Right. I mean, I agree that it's a relevant question, but there's a difference between saying, hey, who would I like to be president, and saying, hey, who should I spend time creating an organization to create massive support for? And so
there, I'm not so sure I favor Donald Trump. I think I would favor the Libertarian Party from that perspective. But in my article, I eschew that perspective. I said, let's put that aside. Let's forget about that for the moment, because it's not the only relevant question. It's an important question. And here you're pushing me into the Libertarian Party. Not really pushing me reluctantly, but look, I'm a big fan of the Libertarian Party. I've been involved in the Libertarian Party before it started nationally. It started nationally in '72. I ran for office on the LP in '69. So I'm a big supporter of the Libertarian Party. Now you're asking the question, well, what is the best strategy for us libertarians to promote liberty? Should we support Donald Trump, or should we support the Libertarian Party? And I would probably say let's support the Libertarian Party. Because if the Libertarian Party can get more than the difference, say, between Hillary and Donald. Let's say Gary Johnson gets 2% of the vote.
Right.
And let's say that the difference between Hillary and Donald is less than 2% of the vote. This would be magnificent. Libertarianism would be on the map again, as it was when Ron Paul and Ayn Rand put it on the map. So from a strategic point of view, yes, I support the Libertarian Party. And in this article I wrote, I said that. So it's not as if you're pushing me in that direction. I've already said that. But I insist that there's another question, although that's a very good and important question for libertarians, namely, what's our best strategy? But another question is, who do we hope is going to be president? And Gary Johnson, or whoever the LP nominates, is not going to be president. It's going to be either the Republican or the Democrat, or maybe some third party like the mayor of Bloomberg of New York City with the 16-ounce whatever. He's a possibility. I mean, if he runs third party and he's got a lot of money. But we're not talking about him right now. See, what you're trying to do is change the question. Namely,
yeah, I am trying to change the question.
and when you change the question, my answer is LP. But now let's get back to the original question, because there are two questions on the board. One, who do we hope will be president from a libertarian point of view, a realistic candidate? And the second question is, what's the best libertarian strategy? Well, in terms of the best libertarian strategy, I think I agree with 99% of libertarians. Support the Libertarian Party. Case closed. Easy. But now we have a rougher question that you keep trying to sneak out of, namely, forget about the Libertarian Party. There are two major parties, and we stipulate the Libertarian Party is going to get its usual 1 or 2% of the vote.
Right.
Who do we favor? And I say we favor our man, the Donald. The Donald is magnificent. I mean, it takes courage to say that you like Putin. Look, Ron Paul in the 2012 during the South Carolina thing was using the golden rule. He said, let's treat other countries the way we'd like to be treated. And he was booed unmercifully by the Republicans. That took courage on Ron Paul's part. Well, we have to acknowledge that it takes courage on Donald's part to say, I like Putin. Putin is a guy I can get along with. I can make a deal with him, whatever. And we have to extrapolate from that he's less likely to have a first nuclear strike at Russia than these other guys who want to knock Russian planes out of the sky.
So, you know, I agree with all that. I just think that that although I agree that I want to talk about a different question in addition to, I think my misunderstanding of your article, if it is that, is understandable. So I just want to grab the second paragraph here. I'm just going to quote some of the second paragraph. Or I'll start with the first. Dr. Donald Miller and I, this is in Walter Block's voice, are starting up a new group to be called Libertarians for Trump, LFT. LFT has its work cut out for it in mobilizing massive support for Donald Trump within the libertarian community. So that seems to me like you're saying it is worthy of significant energy and finances to push in favor of a Trump candidacy rather than to help the LP get to 2% or to, I don't know, play chess or whatever other things you could do with your money and time. What am I missing here?
What you're missing is you don't like arguendo. You don't like hypotheticals. You don't like contrary to fact conditionals. You still want to push me toward the LP. You want to say it's not worth our effort to support Donald. Well, that's a different question. I'm putting on, what do the horses have when
the blinders?
I'm putting blinders on. And I'm saying, look, let's just look at the Republican candidates. And you're saying, no, take the blinders off and let's look at more things. Well, okay, if you do that, then it's an empirical question. It's a matter of prudential judgment, whether it's worth our time to support the LP or to support Donald Trump. And I agree that's a very ticklish question, a very important question, and one that is not clear to me. My answer is really both. You know, look, there are many ways to promote liberty. So let me broaden your question. You're trying to broaden you. Look, there are many ways to promote liberty. There's Liberty.me. There's what I do as a professor of economics. There's the Free State Project. There's think tanks like the Mises Institute or the Cato Institute or Reason. There are journals, the Liberty Papers and Independent Institute. There are many, many ways to promote liberty. Which is the best? Well, if you do any one thing, you have to do less of everything else because you've only got so much time and money to devote to all the libertarian things. And as to that question, which is the best way to promote liberty, I would say, as an Austrian subjectivist, there's no one right way to do it. Or maybe, you know, another way is writing novels like Ayn Rand, or making a movie, or singing a song that's based on liberty, or my favorite TV show, South Park, which is a way of promoting liberty, right? I mean, isn't that right? I mean, it's a way of promoting liberty. There are two libertarians running it.
I just have to note that I admit to being surprised that you watch South Park and that it's your favorite TV show.
Cartman is my man. I'm a Cartman fan. You know,
I'm just sensing a striking Cartman-Trump similarity.
That's right. There are some similarities between Cartman and Trump. I didn't see it, thanks to you. I now will appreciate that. But the point is, what's the answer to that question? And my answer is, when people ask me what should they do, I say whatever's the most fun. Give your money to that, give your time, because we don't know what's the best way to promote liberty. Everyone should, you know, I'm a Mao fan here. Uncle Mao said, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Well, we don't have 1,000 ways to promote liberty, but we got a dozen or so that I just mentioned. And every state has a think tank. I think there are 50 state think tanks now that promote liberty. There's the Institute for Justice that helps hair braiders and Uber and Lyft. And I mean, there are many, many ways to promote liberty. And what you're now saying is that since I'm saying that we should use some of our effort for Donald Trump, I'm really saying we shouldn't use that energy for the Libertarian Party. And I say to you, well, maybe do anything in politics. Maybe we should forget about the Libertarian Party and forget about Donald Trump and focus on writing the next man, economy, and state, or something like that. I don't know the answer to that. That's a question that I didn't raise. What I did in this article, which is presumably the topic, I said, let's put the blinders on. Let's forget about everything else, which you don't much like doing. You want to focus on everything all at once. And what I'm saying as a professor is that if you want to get clarity on any one issue, you have to put the blinders on and forget about everything else and just look at one small thing. You know, there was this, what was that black guy, the scientist, the guy with the peanut? George Washington Carver.
Okay.
The story about George Washington Carver is he prayed to God and said, God, give me knowledge about everything. And God said, you know, the hell with you. I'm not giving you knowledge about everything. He didn't say it quite that way, but he said, sorry, Charlie, I'm not doing it. And then George Washington Carver said, well, give me knowledge about everything in biology. And God said, forget it. And then poor George Washington Carver said, just give me knowledge about the peanut. And God said, okay. Well, if you want to get anywhere, you have to narrowly focus yourself. And George Washington Carver focused on the stupid peanut, and he learned a lot about the peanut, more than anyone else did, and that's good. George Washington Carver put the blinders on him, and he just focused on the peanut. And you would have come along and said, look, you know, what about cauliflower, or you know, what about daffodils or something? I'm just focusing on which of the Republican candidates should we favor, if we want to favor any one of them. And my man is Donald Trump, and it's very clear. And nothing you've said gets me off that point. The way you're trying to get me off that point is to say, well, let's focus on something else. And I'm saying, okay, if you want to focus on something else, then let's put the blinders on and focus narrowly on that.
Okay. So I want to say two things in response. Number one is I'm looking at the article again, and I just don't think it's clear that you're putting blinders on here. I think you need an extra sentence in here saying let's set it aside. Let's set aside the question of whether Trump is worthy or the Republicans are worthier. I think it needs an extra sentence. But
I had that sentence in there. I don't have the thing in front of me, but I remember putting a sentence like that. You probably took it out. No, I'm kidding.
It made my talk with you much more combative, and gives us a better chance of higher hits to get that out. So yes, I will go and edit all your pieces to make them more outrageous. Okay, so the second thing, let's just talk about Trump himself. I'm with you that foreign policy is a really important issue. But in my view, because politics is in a big way about advertisement, long run cultural change, Trump has some rhetorical tendencies which should be really disturbing to people of a classical liberal heritage. His a willingness to his desire to open up the libel laws to curb free speech and go after journalists who attack him. His abetting of violence toward protesters who show up at his events. His encouragement of xenophobic restrictions on Muslim immigration with the implied restrictions on freedom of religion that go with that, and monitoring all the Muslims in the United States. All this stuff, especially on kind of civil liberties side, seems to me really scary in terms of the cultural change that indicates. And to me, that's a big reason to stay away from Trump, even though, I agree his foreign policy stuff does sound better than Cruz.
Okay, well, I think you're making 2 out of 3 good points. And you should have added, what was it, Donald Duke? No, what's his name? The KKK guy?
Oh, I don't know his name. Unlike Trump, I just haven't researched the KKK enough to know his name. Yeah.
The story on that is that when he was first asked about David Duke, I think it is, the guy from Louisiana, he said, Duke is crazy, he's in the KKK, and that was it. And then he was asked again, and my understanding is that he didn't understand the question. It wasn't clear. They were having some glitches. And he sort of flumpered around. And then they said, oh, he refuses to renounce David Duke. He's horrible. He's a KKK Nazi. And then right after that, he said, no, I disavow him. So, as my lady friend, what's her name? The blonde lady. The conservative lady, long blonde hair.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, but she's not coming to mind right now.
What she said is, what's this disavowing business? When has Hillary ever asked to disavow any commie, or when is Bernie asked to disavow anyone. And Ron Paul had a great thing when this same guy, David Duke, I think his name, supported Ron and gave him money, and they wanted Ron to give him back the money. And Ron said, look, Ron isn't politically correct. Ron said, look, he supports me. I don't support him. And when he gives me money, he has less money and I have more money. And that's good. Now, with regard to the libel, obviously, I agree with you. I mean, I'm a big fan of legalizing libel. In my book, Defending the Undefendable, that you mentioned, I have a whole chapter on that. And with regard to the Muslims, you know, all he said is, look, it's true that not every Muslim is a bomber, but most of the bombers are Muslims. And now I don't agree. I'm an open borders kind of guy. So I don't agree with him, but you have to put this in context. Now, with regard to the violence thing, here I think you're giving my man Donald a bad rap, because these people come into his rented quarters and they start shouting. And he says, kick him out or get rid of him or whatever. Well, he has every right to do that. The people that are doing the violence are not him. The people doing the violence are the trespassers. So I disagree with you on that one. But look, I agree that and you might as well mention protectionism. Look, you know, I'm a free trader, obviously. I'm a libertarian. So Donald is a little weak on that, but compared to what? You know, there's this joke, an economist was asked, how's your wife? And you know what the answer was?
Compared to what?
Compared to what? So look, you're telling me Donald is no good on this, Donald is no good on that, Donald's no good on the third thing. On the fourth thing, I disagree, Donald's okay on that. But 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, Donald is no good. But compared to what? Compared to whom? Compared to Cruz, compared to Rubio, Kasich, Jeb, whoever, Chris Christie. Now Donald is starting to look not so bad, even on these other non-foreign policy issues. Okay, so Donald's a little weak on libel, and he's vindictive, but Hillary, I mean, look at all the problems Hillary's got with killing that guy in whatever, I forget, Vince somebody, she's accused of killing him and you know, giving speeches for 300,000 a pop. I mean, you know, when you have to compare. You just can't say Donald's no good on this, that, and the other. Yes, Donald's no good on this, that, and the other. Fine, but who's good on anything except for Ron Paul and maybe
Ron? Gary Johnson's not bad.
Okay, I support Gary. I support Ron. I wrote a whole book on Ron. You know, I'm a big
right.
Ron Paul.
So, really, I got to admit, Walter, this has been my roundabout way of coming back to my original attempt to expand your question, which I think is really the important question that's implicit in your article, which is, to me, it's not just that we're sacrificing some time or finance, that you're sacrificing some time or finances to support Trump, and indeed those are your time and finances, they're not mine, but also that there are costs. There are costs in terms of how liberty ideas, classical liberalism, libertarianism is perceived. Is it perceived as being associated with this protectionist bully who's happy to restrict immigration and so on, or are liberty ideas seen as being somehow above the fray? And so to me, it's not just that we're giving up like an opportunity cost, but we're actually in danger of sacrificing something or tarnishing the good name of the ideas that flow from Ayn Rand or Ron Paul or Lysander Spooner or Adam Smith.
Well, we're always in danger of tarnishing good ideas. I mean, when we come out against public education, our friends on the left say we're against education. You know, when we come out against welfare systems, they think we're against the poor. We're going to be tarnished no matter what. Let's forget about what other people are going to do to us. Let's just try to get at the truth. And the truth of the matter is that in this limited situation, Donald is the most libertarian. Now, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that because it detracts from other things, but now you and I are detracting. We're not reading Human Action. Right now, we should be reading Human Action, and we learn more economics, and we better be better for it, and we better able to promote liberty. Instead, we're talking about Donald Trump. So you're a bad guy, too.
I admit the whole thing might be more edifying if we just did readings from Human Action. We'd just come back in a month. We'll just do readings from Human Action.
No, but that's the implication of what you're saying. And I think it's a fallacious thing. It's saying that we should always try to maximize the promotion of liberty, which I will agree with. But then what you're saying is that a way to maximize liberty is not this. Well, I think even on that basis, look, I put this article in the paper, rather in the LouRockwell.com, and you know how many people responded to me?
I don't know.
About 500. And out of the 500, maybe 10 said that I'm a moron or an idiot or something like that. But 490 said, yes, 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 sign me up. They became more enthused about libertarianism because of this. It's true.
Well, they became more enthused about a certain project. I certainly hope that these people are ardent, people well-grounded in the tradition, well-grounded in the economics. But it does make me suspicious when people are enthusiastic about anything Trump-related, that there might be some softness in their liberty perspective.
No, a lot of them are saying, look, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I was ashamed of supporting Trump. All my friends and my fellow libertarians were saying I was crazy. And thanks to you, Walter, I'm putting words in their mouth, but this is the gist of hundreds of letters. I now see my way clear. You're absolutely right. Trump is the best way to avoid World War III. Libertarians are against World War III. So, you know, if I wanted to be nasty, which I don't, I would accuse you of being pro-World War III, which is obviously crazy. I mean, you're not pro-World War III, but with as much sense as you're attacking my man Donald, I can attack you for being a warmonger. I can say, you know, you're concerned that I'm wasting time here on stopping World War III. Oh, you must be in favor of World War III. Now, obviously not in favor of World War III, but that's what you're doing to me. And I resisted.
Walter, I've had a fabulous time. I have to close it down now. I have attempted manfully to convert you, but have so far failed. I will attempt again in the near future, or whatever new crazy project you've got. So I'm going to start wrapping up the show, and the way I do that, as always, I'm going to tell people about some new great stuff coming up on Liberty.me Live. I'll tell people how to get more great Walter Block, and then I'll turn it back over to you for the final word.
Okay, sounds good. By the way, have I converted you?
No, I am not yet converted. I remain ardently anti-Trump. But the main effect is that I'm going to go reread that article and looking for a sentence about blinders.
And I like the word "yet." You just said, "Go do your thing."
Okay, so great new Liberty.me live shows tonight. We've got Unbiased America coming on. They've got Joseph Bast of the Heartland Institute to talk about global warming. On Thursday night, we've got The Future of Freedom with Jacob Hornberger and Scott Horton. Oh, I meant to mention that Dan Sanchez advocates that we should have Horton's Law. And Horton's Law is that you can count on a politician to follow through on all of his horrible promises and none of the good ones. But now I'm sneaking in a counterattack on Walter. So that's the new stuff that's coming up on Liberty.me Live. To get more Walter Block, you should check out his newest book, Water Capitalism: The Case for Privatizing Oceans, Rivers, Lakes, Mud Puddles, and Ditches, which he wrote with Peter L. Nelson. And you should also check out his most famous book, Defending the Undefendable. So that's all I've got for today. Walter, I'll turn it over to you for the last word.
Let me just say that there are now two Defending the Undefendables. Defending the Undefendable 1 in 1976 and Defending the Undefendable 2 in, I forget when, 2013, 14. And I'm now working on 3, and I'm going to put Donald Trump in there. Thanks for having me on your show again. It's always a pleasure, Mike, even though you favor World War III.
Thank you, Walter, and everybody have a great day. Thank you for joining us on Liberty.me Live.
Take care.